Good day, everyone. So, our lesson for this afternoon is all about Western art movements. So, pardon for the background music. Okay. So, in prehistoric art, it laid down the foundations of what people would be known as art today. So, these noticeable features in these artworks are the exaggerated features and the attempt at mimicking the subjects. So, here we have an example of Venus of Willendorf on the upper left portion, and Lascaux cave paintings on the right. Okay, and in the prehistoric Aegean art, so the art of the inhabitants of the Aegean Sea before the Greek civilization. Okay, so each of these art styles moved toward more lifelike proportions and the use of colors and space. So their art styles are more on like the real proportions of if it is human, and then it has the same proportion as the human, and so on and so forth. So in ancient Greek art, it popularized many of the elements of art that is seen today, especially in sculptures and architectures. Okay, we have the Parthenon on the bottom part, and in the upper left we have the discus thrower. These are the products of ancient Greek art. In the ancient Roman art, it carries with it the characteristics of a mix of Greek and Etruscan art. Okay, so many of the sculptures and paintings of Rome continued the use of realistic likeness when portraying humans, just like the Greek art. So they also pioneered the use of concrete. So sila ang unang gumamit ng concrete. So just like for example, we have the Roman wall painting, and we also have the old Roman portrait, the bust. Okay, his head, and the Pantheon Marcus, that is part of the ancient Roman art. Now let's move on to the classical antiquity art. So the early 80th centuries were marked with a monotheistic belief in Jesus Christ. So in contrast to the polytheistic belief of Greece and Rome. Okay, so people in Rome had started to shift their beliefs to Christianity. Okay? So mula sa napakarami nilang Diyos, naging isa na lang. Okay? And it was solidified when it was legalized on 313. Thus, it was called Christian art. Okay? And it started to flourish at that time. Now let's move on to the early medieval Europe. So Christian art are still continued on this era. Due to the due to the rise of Charlemagne as king of Rome, who agreed to continue and revive the old styles of art, as well as portraying Jesus Christ. So as you can see here, in the left portion we have the Drogo Sacramentary, the Cross of Lothair on the middle, and the Ahene High Cross on the right. So those are the products of the early medieval Europe. Next, let's move on to the Gothic Europe. So this era of art gave rise to many of the famous cathedrals that can still be seen today, such as the Notre Dame. Okay, so if you have been to Notre Dame, you are very familiar with their ceiling, their walls, their arts in walls, the ceilings, because it is followed after the Gothic style of the Europe, just like the Notre Dame Cathedral, the Gothic Cathedral ceiling, and the Lichfield Cathedral stained glass. So that is in the Gothic Europe. Next is in the early Renaissance. So in the early Renaissance, the artists began to aspire for realism. Okay, so from a Christian art, they moved to realism. Okay, in trying to depict the human form, just like what the Aegean art did. Okay, so they also have this depiction of space. Okay, so mythology became an additional subject matter aside from religion, just like here. This should have been Birth of Venus, not Birth of Jesus, by Sandro Botticelli. Okay, next, let's move on to the High Renaissance. So here, it represented the climax of the goals or the early Renaissance, which is to realistically represent figures in the provided space with credible notion and appropriately decent style. Just like here on the right, okay, the School of Athens by Raphael and the Last Supper by Leonardo da Vinci. Okay, so next is Mannerism. So Mannerism came after the High Renaissance and before the Baroque art period. It is characterized by exaggerated forms, humor, and lavish decorations. Just like here, we have this picture of Madonna with the long neck and the burial of Count Orgas by El Greco. Next, let's move on to the Baroque. Okay, so in Baroque, it is a period of artistic style that started around 1600 in Rome, Italy, and spread throughout the majority of Europe. Okay, so just like here on the left upper part, we have the St. Peter's Square in Vatican by Gian Lorenzo Bernini, and we also have the Massacre of the Innocents by Peter Paul Rubens on the bottom left. Okay, next let's move on to the Rococo style. In 18th century in Europe, the Rococo style became prevalent in interior design, painting, sculpture, and the decorative arts. A reaction to the rigidity of Baroque style, the frivolous and playful Rococo first manifested itself with interior design and decorative work. Okay, so it has serpentine lines, heavy use of ornament, as well as the themes revolving around playfulness, love, and nature. Just like this one, The Blue Boy by Thomas Gainsborough. Next is the neoclassicism. So it is an art movement that inspired by the classical art and culture of the ancient Greece and Rome civilization. Just like here, Napoleon on his imperial throne by John August Dominic Ingres. And we also have the US Capitol building there in Washington, was designed by William Thornton. That is a part of the neoclassicism period or the neoclassicism movement. Next is the Romanticism. Okay, so this features the desire for freedom. So not exclusive to political sense, but also encompassing freedom of thought, of feeling, of action, of worship, of speech, and of taste. So that is under Romanticism. Okay, example here is The Insane Woman by Theodore Garicot and Abbey in the Oak by Caspar David Friedrich. So that is Romanticism. Next is we also have another example, Three Women in a Village Church by Wilhelm Liebli. So that is part of the Romanticism. Next is the Realism. So in Realism, this movement argued that only the things of one's own time, what people could see for themselves, were real. Okay, like what is happening on the present era, on that particular time and setting. Okay, that is Realism. Just like this Third Class Carriage by Honor Damier and the Olympia by Edward Manet. So these are realism. Next is Impressionism. So unlike realism, that is after absolutely fixed and precise depiction of social events, kasi nga sabi ko, diba, present time. Dito naman sa Impressionism, it attempted to capture fleeting moments that convey elusiveness and impermanence of images and conditions. Okay, they are like taking you to a different perspective in a broader sense, okay, in a broader point of view. That is Impressionism, just like this Ruined Cathedral by Claude Monet and the La Place du Théâtre Francois by Camille Pissarro. Okay, so they are like giving you an impression of what that time was all about. Okay, next is the Post-impressionism. Okay, so since we have the Impressionism, we also have this Post-impressionism. So the Post-impressionism is systematically examine the properties and expressive qualities of line, pattern, form, and color than the Impressionism did. Okay, so remember that one. They are expressive on those qualities, unlike the Impressionism that is fixed um, unlike Impressionism that is attempting to capture different moments. Okay, so this is Post-impressionism, just like the Night Cafe by Vincent van Gogh, and even the Starry Starry Night is by the same Vincent van Gogh, is also part of Post-impressionism. Okay, even this family reunion are also part of that one, as well as this Art Nouveau. Okay, so this Art Nouveau, on the other hand, is an important international architectural and design movement that attempted to create art based on natural forms. Okay, it could be mass produced for a large audience, or it can be ornamental. Okay, just like this Victor Horta, this painting, and this Louis Comfort Tiffany. Okay, so those are Art Nouveau. Next, we also have Fauvism, first avant-garde movement in France in the 20th century. Fauve painters, wild beasts were the first to break with Impressionism. So it was founded by André Derain and Henri Matisse. That was Fauvism. So the characteristics of Fauvism is it is bold. It has undisguised brush strokes. It is high-keyed, vibrant, and uses saturated colors, and it is in simplified forms. Okay, just like this Pinede Akasi, or a landscape by the founder himself, Andre Derain. Okay, so you can see the trees are quite simple. The brush strokes can be clearly seen, and the colors that were used was saturated. Next is the Expressionism. It is very different from Impressionism, okay? Because Expressionism emerged as a response to humanity's increasing conflict of worldview and the loss of spirituality and authenticity. So it was founded by Vincent van Gogh, Edvard Munch, and James Ensor. The characteristics is the distortion, okay? The distortion, the deployment of strong colors to convey a variety of anxiety and yearning, and swirling, swaying, and exaggerated brushstrokes to emphasize the emotion of the artist. Okay, so I think Starry Starry Night belongs on between Post-impressionism and Expressionism, but I think it would be more favorable with Expressionism. Next is the Cubism. Now, the Cubists rejected the concept that art should copy nature. Okay, unlike the Fauvism. Okay, it emphasized on the two-dimensionality of the canvas. Okay, it's not based on, it's not favorable on the three-dimensional aspect of the thing. So it was founded by Pablo Picasso and George Braque. Okay, so the characteristics is it is open, and it has geometric forms. Okay, geometric forms, two-dimensional geometric forms, and it has multiple or contrasting vantage forms. The artist, Pablo Picasso, of this painting titled Les Demoiselles d'Avignon. Okay. Next is the Surrealism. So it seeks to explore the unconscious mind as a way of creating art, resulting in dreamlike, sometimes bizarre imagery across endless mediums, focuses on illustrating the mind's deepest thoughts automatically when they surface. So it has two styles, guys. Okay, it has two styles. First is the hyperrealism or hyperrealistic style, and the second one is the automatism. In the hyperrealism, objects were depicted in crisp detail. Okay, like naadyo detail. There is really, even the minute detail is there. Even even the illusion of the three-dimensional space is there. However, it is much more like in a dream-like quality, meaning that some of the colors are faded. Okay. However, in automatism, the act of automatic or uncensored regarding of the thoughts and images that emerge into an artist's mind. So it is not in crisp detail. It is much more on the two-dimensional one. Okay, just like when you woke up, right? So it's like kind of blurred. So that is part of surrealism. Next is the abstract impressionism. Okay, So it is a form of abstract painting in which artists use colors instead of object representations. Okay, remember this one. So the difference between impressionism and abstract impressionism. So its goal is to express wisdom, mental focus, and inner emotions. Okay, so instead of objects in impressionism, in abstract impressionism, it only uses colors, no object representation at all. Okay, that is abstract impressionism. Next is the assemblage. So it is a means of creating works of art almost entirely from pre-existent elements, where the artist's contribution was to be found more in making the links between objects, putting them together, than making objects from the beginning. Okay, so it's like a combination of different objects to form a new meaning from those assembled objects. That is where the assemblage came from. Okay, we have an example right there: the Still Life by Pablo Picasso and the Earth Eclipse by Joseph Cornell. So those are different materials that was assembled. Okay, next is the photography. Okay, it is a medium that involves the rendering of optical images on light sensitive surfaces. So it is used for documenting, understanding, and interpreting the world. So just like here, the trolley by the New Orleans and the untitled one. So the artist was Seydou Keita. That is photography. We also have this pop art. Okay, so this was reintroduced in identifiable imagery. It celebrated commonplace objects and people of everyday life, seeking to elevate popular culture to the level of fine art. It is a direct descendant of Dadaism in the way that it mocks the established art world by appropriating images from the street, supermarket, the mass media, and presents it as an art. It is a reaction against abstract expressionism. Okay, we have an example here. On the left, I was a rich man's plaything, and Campbell's soup. Okay, this is pop art. All right.